The Chicago Bulls are a freaking hot mess. And for many people, we've known that they've been a hot mess, but this is a different level of hot mess that the Chicago Bulls are in right now, right? Losing ground on the lottery is one, which we'll talk a little bit about. Reports that the locker room doesn't believe in AK, which is even worse. Trade deadlines moves that are looking worse by the day, and the Jaden Ivey situation is shedding even more light on the chaos that is the Chicago Bulls. At this point, what we're looking at is that this ain't about losing games. This is about finding a direction and where the hell is your franchise headed in the future. We're going to talk about all those things plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And I'm going to start off here, right? Before we get into the drama and the mess, which I guess some could say this is drama and the mess, the final games for the Chicago Bulls are all going to come. It's one important factor for the final games for the Chicago Bulls. That is, can we stay ahead or behind, depending on how you're looking at it, in the lottery standings? That's what, ahead in the lottery standings of the Milwaukee Bucks. That's probably the most important thing here for the future of the team. We'll talk about AK. We'll talk about Billy Donovan. We'll talk about the locker room here in a second, right? But can the Bulls stay ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks? That is the biggest question here. Bobby Portis recently came out and said that, that the Bucks are going to Giannis is not going to play another game this season, which we kind of already knew with as many games left. That wasn't going to happen, right? The Bulls have a full game lead over the Milwaukee Bucks right now, who the Bucks did win their last game. The Bulls are losers of the last four to stay at number 9, right? But with the number of games that the Chicago Bulls have left remaining, even though we have an easy schedule remaining the rest of the way, holding off the Milwaukee Bucks from passing us up has to be the thing. The Bulls have the easiest schedule remaining over the last 7 games in the NBA. Over the last 7 games, we have the easiest schedule remaining with opponents, the hardest opponents being the Knicks, the Suns, and the Orlando Magic, and our easiest opponents being the Indiana Pacers, 2 games against the Washington Wizards, and a game against the Dallas Mavericks. Now, the benefit of it, the games that are easy on the schedule, we've lost to the Pacers, we've lost to the Wizards before, we've lost to the Dallas Mavericks, right? So, we'll see what happens in that. When the Bulls very well could lose all these remaining 7 games, I doubt that's going to happen. They're going to get a win in there somewhere. If it does happen, if they do lose out the remaining way, then cool, we're good, right? But right now, it is a chance that the Chicago Bulls could get passed by the Milwaukee Bucks. It really depends on, how good they continue to play without Giannis, and we'll see how that shakes out. But that's right now one of the Bulls fans' worst fears is that somehow we have a worse record than the Milwaukee Bucks, which the Milwaukee Bucks, by the way, have the 20th easiest schedule remaining in the NBA, but it's still quite harder than the Chicago Bulls. Their hardest opponents remaining are the Pistons, the Boston Celtics, the Houston Rockets, and the Philadelphia 76ers, with their easy games being labeled as 2 games against the Brooklyn Nets and a game against the Memphis Grizzlies. So that's how that one shakes out. But that is really the storyline that we're watching the rest of the way for the Chicago Bulls. It is, can the Bulls hold off and not lose out in the standings? We already kind of talked about it. If the Bulls do drop down to 10, their chances at a top 4 pick go from a 20.3% chance if they're at number 9 to 13.9% chance at number 10, which is what a lot of Bulls fans are the most important thing. Can we get into that top 4? Now, either way, we're going to need some lottery luck. And I know this is my trauma speaking. I want to be clear there. I know that this is nothing else but my own trauma speaking. But with the Bulls' luck, what will happen is that the Bulls will finish with a worse record than the Milwaukee Bucks, like Bulls fans want. But then the Milwaukee Bucks still end up going into the top 4. And then people will say, thing that they've always said, the Bulls can't even tank, right? Because then the Milwaukee Bucks, who had a better record than the Chicago Bulls, end up moving into the top 4. That's probably exactly what's going to happen here. And it is what it is, right? That's why I don't necessarily obsess over it as much as some Bulls fans do, because it's luck one way or another. And luck can go for you, can go opposite with you when you really look at it, and we'll see, right? But with that is the thing that we're looking for the rest of this way, right? Is what's going to happen. It's the Bulls versus the Bucks for that prime spot in the tank, if that's how you want to label it. Which is funny enough, because the last time the Bulls were in a meaningful postseason, it was in a playoff series against the Milwaukee Bucks, right? Like, so now, even though the meaning is different, right now we're talking about the fight of a future of a franchise. We'll end up seeing what happens right now, right? So, overall, just looking at this when it comes down for the rest of the way, that's really what we're looking for. And that's really what we're looking. The Bulls have the easiest schedule left in the NBA. Now, does that mean that do we have a chance of anybody getting shut down even further? We know Jalen Smith's not coming back. Jaden Ivey's gone off the team. Anthony Simons is probably not coming back despite what they keep telling us in regards to it. But one spot does make a difference. It does make a considerable difference. That 2.3% chance, 20.3% chance versus a 13.9% chance, that's a pretty significant drop, right? And it marks, though, even though there's only about a 6% chance drop in the percentage, it actually marks a 32% drop in overall odds, right? So, we'll see what's going to happen there. For that, if the Bucks do miss out on the top 4 pick, and whoever's there, the max you can get for the Milwaukee Bucks at that point will be 10th, right? They can drop down 4 spots if 4 teams in the lottery pass them up. Same thing for the Chicago Bulls. If the Bulls finish at 9th, if we don't get into the top 4, the best we can get is number 9, and then otherwise we can drop down to 13. So that's how that ends up working out. And we'll end up seeing, if that ends up happening for the Bulls. Right now, if it does happen the way it is, the Bulls would have an 86.1% chance to stay at number 9 is basically how that works out. If it ends up happening with a 50.7% chance, of drafting a little bit above that, depending on like when you look at odds and stuff like that. So we'll end up seeing what happens. Overall, the Bulls, they kind of in a way control their own destiny as far as how strongly they finish the season. But because it's a draft lottery, they don't control their own odds as far as where their draft position is going to go. So that's why it's only half the battle. That's why I don't make as much of it as some people or some channels do, because it's lottery odds one way or another. And the Bulls they did not decide on their tank early enough for them to have a chance to bottom out. Like if you had one of the worst 4 records in the NBA, for example, if you finish with the worst record in the NBA, the lowest that you can go is 5th because 4 teams could pass you up in the lottery. So you still end up with a top 5 pick. The Bulls weren't in that position. They were never going to be in that position. I know that some people wanted them to be and stuff like that, but that's just the reality of what happens. That's what we're looking for, though, the rest of the way, is we're looking to see if the Bulls, where they're going to finish at. And that's really it. When you look at outside of that, the Bulls really don't have a chance, to move up. They're 4 games behind the Memphis Grizzlies for number 8. That means with 7 games left, the Bulls would basically have to lose out. The Milwaukee Bucks would almost have to win out if the Bulls really were going to pass that up. So they're not statistically eliminated from it, technically. They are eliminated, though, from getting up to number 7 as they're 7.5 games behind the New Orleans Pelicans with only 7 games left to play. So, there's still a chance at 8. Bulls just don't have luck. The Memphis Grizzlies are losing at a high rate, too. So I wouldn't even really expect that to be a real chance for the Bulls. So we'll see how these things shake out. But let me know your guys' thoughts down below. How do you feel about the Bulls' odds to stay at number 9? Do you think they're going to end up staying at number 9? Or do you think the Milwaukee Bucks are going to have worse record than the Bulls? They're going to move up to number 9, and the Bulls are going to get the 10th spot in the lottery before the draft lottery happens. Let me know what you guys think on that one down below. But with that said, let's get into some of the shits. This is an interesting place to be in, right? Because we already knew the Bulls were in shambles, right? Like, there's no doubt about it. Decisions that AK's made over the last few years have left the Bulls where they've been, and that's just the reality of the situation. Some things, didn't break for the Bulls. Some things did. It is what it is. But there's a recent report now that the Bulls' locker room is out on AK. Now, in reading the article, you actually hear that it's not actually that they're out on AK. Like, listen, Joe Cowley's been on top of it recently with everything going on with the Bulls, with the Jaden Ivey situation, with the Billy Donovan situation. I got to give him his credit. I'm not a Joe Cowley guy. You guys know that. I have my differences with Joe Cowley, but real is real, and he's been on top of this, right? Now, he wrote into one of his articles saying this. Not one Bulls player was shedding a tear for Ivey's removal from the roster, and not one Bulls player, former or current, has believed in Karnisovas' plan since the start of the season. It's over. Now, let's take a look at that, right? When you say that not one Bulls player believed in the plan, I don't necessarily believe that. You had Kobe White this offseason who said that he was working to be off ball so that he can play with Josh Giddey. You heard that from Kobe White, right? Josh Giddey actually improved to be a three-point shooter to help that spacing with the backcourt with Kobe White. Kobe White started off the season injured. He never really got back going and being himself. Shout out to him having success in Charlotte. So I don't know if I believe, like, this was a roster that if you go back to the training camp and that stuff opening, this was a roster that very much so believed in each other as teammates, and the relationship between these guys is part of the reason why AK thought to bring these guys back in the way that he would and wanted to see what they're going to be. The relationship between Josh Giddey, Trey Jones, Kobe White, Modest Buzelis, Ayo Dosunmu, like that relationship was entrenched there. So I don't know if I believe that. It seems to me like, and this is my own personal thing, that Joe Cowley is using the fact that players didn't care about Jaden Ivey's removal as meaning that the players haven't believed in it in the start of the season. And I just disagree. Now, you have this new roster that don't know each other, and that's probably a big reason why the Bulls players are able to take this, removal in stride and be like, well, damn, that sucks, but, the show goes on, in my personal opinion, right? But he goes on to say this. The trades have been a disaster. The draft pick's a joke. The idea of chasing competitive integrity over increasing draft odds and complete misguided excuse for organizational malpractice. Now, again, I have a more realistic view. I know that a lot of Bulls, we should have traded X player 3 years ago. And the reality of it is this. Kobe White was on what was a most improved player of the year run. Not many teams are going to trade a player while they're on the season after that. The Bulls also ended on a 15-5 stretch the following season. Most teams are going to want to give that team an opportunity to see, all right, is it real in the regular season? And the fact of the matter is, AK looked at it and said, it ain't real, and traded all them motherfuckers. Now, has there been organizational malpractice? Absolutely, right? But when you look at the draft picks by AK, it's been more misses than hits. Now, I know people want to label Noah Essengay a miss right now. To me, in reality, you can't do that. People are getting so caught up in the fact that Derek Queen did have a really good season, which, though it looked like he got figured out over the course of his rookie year, Noah Essengay projects as more of a two-way player. I'm willing to give it a chance to see, right? And you guys, a lot of people are using the fact that Joe Dumars said, well, we called every team, but every draft intel leading into the draft showed that the Chicago Bulls had no interest in Derek Queen, and therefore, why would they call the Bulls if they know that this is a team that's going to pass on Derek Queen anyway, right? Like, those are things. The Bulls come out, KC people come out, they didn't get that call from the Pelicans. Regardless of all of that, right? The fact is, where you sit now as a franchise is in hell, and it's in absolute and utter hell. But we have to keep in mind, and I think it's fair to say, when AK was hired by the Chicago Bulls, it was almost universal acclaim. Nobody thought AK was going to be as bad as his job as what he was. Nobody. Go back and look at the articles then, even from Joe Cowley, because AK came over from Denver, where he did a lot of work. He's got a lot of the acclaim from people within Denver of being one of the guys that scouted Jokic, was a big voice in that room for them to draft Jokic. Some of the decisions he made, they're rising up from, the assistant GM up until, they created the president of basketball operations to promote Connolly so that they could promote AK to GM so no team could poach him in a upgrade or a promotion to GM, right? So a lot of people thought that the AK move by the Chicago Bulls was going to be a good one, that was somebody who was going to come in and re-guide the thing of the franchise. And it just hasn't been that. Now, the part of Joe Cowley's article that I think also stands out, and that's very loud into this, right, is the fact that, that things are growing reportedly, that things can go left. Like, I did an emergency live stream on it yesterday, but, saying that there's growing chance that Donovan walks at the end of the season if Arturas stays on, which is such a stark contrast to how that relationship has been over the last 3-4 years, right? We've heard everything from it's so collaborative, they work together, they really value the collaborative relationship between the two, but now it's seeming like that's starting to turn, right? And so when we hear that ownership is starting to take a look at it, this Jaden Ivey situation, how that's blowing up in the public, those type of things, it is what it is. I was in a conversation in the Discord with my little brother Vaughn, right? And Vaughn talked about how the bad PR and stuff, could it lead to ownership stepping in and actually making a move? And it was a great question, right? But my response to Vaughn was, you have way too much faith in ownership to give a damn. And it wasn't that I disagreed with Vaughn and his take. It was that I don't have faith in the Reinsdorf to look at something and be like, damn, we got to get ahead of this and fix it. Keep in mind, and the reason why I say that is one of the worst, everybody knew Jim Boylan was a terrible head coach for the Chicago Bulls. You brought in AK, and Michael and Jerry Reinsdorf wanted AK to keep on Jim Boylan. And we all knew what a disaster that was. We knew the optics of that. We knew how he ruined players like Laurie Marketing and their confidence and stuff like that. But yet they wanted this idiot to stay on. So, and maybe I'm using that too much to kind of skew my expectation of ownership. I would love for them to step in and realize, damn, we got to get this shit together because we looking like fools out here. But I don't think they give a damn, right? And so I think when you look at all the misses by AK, trade deadline moves that don't make sense and look like they're getting worse every day. the trade deadline moves that the Bulls made, you better do something with those second round picks because these players that you brought in don't look good. Jaden Ivey is gone now. Anthony Simon's unlikely to stay. Colin Sexton looks great. I would love for him to stay here despite Bulls fans trying to blame the lack of a tank on him. I would love for him to stay here and be that scorer off the bench for the Bulls. I think him and Trey Jones coming off the bench, you got a really good guard tandem there. But, Nick Richards, you may keep him on as a backup or Zach Collins, right? But you didn't add any clarity, right? And so you increase your chances at your draft odds of your own pick, which is great. I want to be clear. That's great to be able to recognize a deep draft and saying, all right, this is where we need to get our next great talent at because it wasn't coming anywhere else. It's great to identify that. But that's the bare minimum of what the fuck you can do with everybody. We've known this draft was going to be generational for the last 3 years. We knew that the 2026 draft was going to be deep like that. So it just adds to the frustration of Bulls fans and where the hell they are right now, man. And that's the problem. Right now, the Bulls, some things can break for the Bulls. They can get lucky. Portland is on a 2-game winning streak. The Clippers lost yesterday. So like they're only a half game back of the 8th seed, which is exactly where we want them to be. We want them to be in the 8th seed, so they got 2 chances to get 1 win and get into the playoffs, and we get that fucking pick. Because you have a top 10 pick and a pick that's 15 or 16 where the Portland Trail Blazers pick is likely to be. Let's do it. Let's get that fucking done, right? Now that's, again, another thing that's outside of the control, which adds to so much frustration with this front office. So much of this front office is viewed as luck. Like, while I disagree to an extent, but look at it. Io was a player that was projected to go at the end of the first round. He's probably AK's best draft pick overall right now. Modest is eventually going to be that, but he dropped to the second round. You took him, right? And I still think you need some credit for taking him because you didn't necessarily need another guard at the time. After you signed Lonzo, Alex Caruso, you have Zach LaVine, you already have Kobe White on the roster, but they drafted him, and he played right away, right? Modest Buzelis, a good draft pick, but again, should have probably been the number 1 overall pick in that draft, or at least a top 5 pick. He fell all the way down to the Bulls at 11. We drafted him. We kept it pushing, right? But there's a case to be made that people can say the Bulls' best draft picks were luck or fell into the Bulls' laps. The draft picks that AK touted, a top 4 pick in P. Will, trash. Dalen Cherry, Julian Phillips, gone. Dalen's the only other first-round pick. Julian Phillips, the second-round pick, gone, right? Marko Simonovic, the second-round pick, gone. So, what have you done, right? So, it's when you look at this franchise, the fact of the matter is it's frustration. And it's frustration from everybody from top to bottom. So to hear that the owners could be frustrated too, good, you should fucking be frustrated. You own a franchise that right now is being put through the ringer because of the person that you have in charge running the day-to-day isn't doing a fucking good job at it. And that's just the reality of it. And so with the trade deadline moves looking worse, the relation between AK and Billy Donovan getting worse apparently as well, to where it could be you have to choose between Billy Donovan and Arturas Karnisovas. What the hell is going on with the Chicago Bulls organization? And right now, that question that's being asked and the fact that national media eyes are now on the Chicago Bulls due to the Jaden Ivey situation and are probably going to be there for a little while now to maintain, what are you going to do? That's the question that everybody's asking and looking for, and we have no answer because, again, we don't know. We have a GM that doesn't talk to the world. Have we seen Mark Eversley publicly speak in the last 18 months? I don't think so. AK is the president of basketball ops. You typically don't see those guys a lot during the season. You see him at the beginning of the season. You see him after the trade deadline. You see him at the end of the season. And then you see him, the cycle starts over again. But Billy Donovan has also been the mouthpiece of this team because we have a GM that can't fucking talk. And so I can understand also being frustrated. Billy Donovan has said out his mouth, I just want to coach, right? He loves coaching. He got into this to coach, right? People saying could Billy Donovan move into the front office, XYZ? It doesn't seem like he has any desire to. That man wants to coach, and he doesn't want to coach with a bunch of bullshit going on around him. So, again, that's even if you want Billy Donovan to be gone. Again, I don't want Billy Donovan to be the coach here, but still, I'm not going to act like I don't understand the frustrations of the man. If what we're hearing is true about his frustration growing with AK, you ain't giving me shit to cook with. Billy Donovan is the cook. He's supposed to put the ingredients that the front office gives him together and find a way to win basketball games. But the person who's shopping for the fucking groceries ain't doing shit right now, and he's making the wrong choices. The motherfucker asked for shallots, you gave him a yellow onion. What are you doing? Right? So it's those type of things that are causing frustration. And if that's what tears this front office and this thing to where we finally get some change in here, because I think eventually you need a new set of eyes on it. Even if AK stays at his job, whatever it is, getting a new GM here that's actually voices, and especially I hope that any new GM comes in and says, listen, I'm not finna be Mark Eversley. You want me to be the GM, you got to let me work. What you've done, AK, you got some good, you got Josh, you got Modest, you got Noah, you got Trey, you got some pieces here. But let me be the one that can refine all of this. And if you can't do that, AK needs to go too, right? So we'll end up seeing what happens, man. The Bulls are a fucking mess, though. That's just what it comes down to. The Bulls are a hot damn mess. The only thing that's gone right for the Bulls at the trade deadline is Leonard Miller. That's it. Leonard Miller is the one that looks good at the trade deadline. So, prioritize your young players. Let's actually see what we're going to do. The Bulls look right now like they may have gotten worse long term, and let's see how we clean this the hell up, right? So what happens next? Is Billy Donovan's future actually tied to AK? I think we'll see, and we'll see that early on after offseason. I think if pressure is truly building around the front office, we're going to see that this offseason too, because if you start seeing Michael or Jerry Reinsdorf around a little bit more, to me that means there's pressure being put on this fucking front office, right? And then we have the draft potential. We have the cap space. We have the trade exceptions. What do you do with this opportunity, or do you cause another fucking disaster by AK? Now you don't have Jaden Ivey to worry about, right? He's gone. He's waived. He's gone. He's out of here. The cap flexibility that it makes for the Bulls without having his cap hold or the $8.8 million, I think that's what his offer would have been or whatever it is, his qualifying offer, that's gone, right? So now it frees up even more. Now you have a void in guard. So let's see what AK can do, if he's even still here, the one making decisions. And I get it. I understand everybody who says, I don't want AK to get another opportunity. This would be a perfect opportunity for a new GM to come in. You have an open roster. You got 6 players leaving. You got a bunch of roster spots you can fill. You got a top 10 pick, potentially another top 15 pick with the Portland Trailblazers pick, complete and utter cap flexibility to reshape the roster if you want. If the Bulls are going to make a move at president of basketball operations or GM, now is the perfect time to do it for that GM to come in and not have to spend a year unclogging players that they don't want on the roster. This is the perfect opportunity to pivot and do that. Will they take it? We'll see. We shall see. But that's going to do it for today's episode, y'all. But I want to hear from you guys right now. How do you feel about the Chicago Bulls direction? It's unclear. The leadership is being questioned, and the future right now is on the line based off what the Bulls can do this offseason. So is it time to move on from AK, or do you still trust that he can actually fix this, or do you think even making a change of a GM that has a louder voice than what Mark Eversley has had would be enough? Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. You can hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Make sure you guys are following us at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, stay safe out there. Really stay safe, y'all. Go Bulls, and always see red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.